different things.
This looks good.
Which is why this year at TCI,
This looks good. No.
we're spending over $600 million on cable programming.
No.
Just to make sure there's always something on. Everyone wants to watch.
Oh, hi. Want to see a story about the plastonauts?
At least that's the goal.
Okay. Here's one about a robot. You know, a machine that's
This looks
made for
good.
different kinds of jobs.
This is CNN.
More on the partial verdict in the taped-beating case out in California at the top of the hour.
We hope to see you then. Before politics, some business news from New York. Here's Terry Keenan.
Thanks, Lou. Spring was in the air today on Wall Street, putting investors in a buying mood. Stock prices rose across the board, encouraged by positive corporate and economic reports. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the day up 25 points at 33.33. Big board volume was heavy, with 206 million shares changing hands. Other key indexes also rallied, with the NASDAQ index of over-the-counter stocks snapping a 4-day losing streak. Ford Motor stock among the most actively traded issues on the big board today. It ended up 1 7/8 points at 45 5/8. That after the automaker reported a profit of $338 million in the first quarter. That ending a string of 5 money-losing quarters. And that's the latest in business news. Tonight on Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, Vice President Dan Quayle joins us to discuss the effects of deregulation. That's 7 and 11:30 Eastern. I'm Terry Keenan in New York. Inside Politics is straight ahead on CNN.
The day after a feast of fortune for the GOP, we chew on tough questions about soft money, corporate donations that are embarrassing the Bush campaign.
Bolstered by his big win in Pennsylvania, Bill Clinton hunts for support in the lion's den of Washington, Capitol Hill.
And she's being called the GOP Senator Arlen Specter's worst nightmare. We'll talk to Democrat Lynn Yeakel about her upset primary victory in Pennsylvania. It's all part of Inside Politics 92.
This is Inside Politics 92 with Bernard Shaw in Washington and Catherine Crier at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
Thanks for joining us. The gala GOP President's Dinner last night should have been a hassle-free celebration for the Bush camp. After all, the president had just easily won the Pennsylvania primary, and he claimed to be over the top in the number of delegates needed to lock up the nomination. But there was a catch. The multi-million-dollar fundraiser was the focus of questions and controversy. A report from CNN Special Assignment Correspondent Brooks Jackson.
They called it the President's Dinner. The President, a bit embarrassed, calls it perfectly legal.
I've taken my last question on that subject and said I think it was a huge success and everything complied with the law.
The Tuesday night dinner raised $9 million for Republicans, most of it from sources that would have been illegal if the money had gone directly to federal candidates. Money from individuals giving more than the federal limits. Money from business corporations, all funneled through state Republican parties and legal under state law, but used in ways that help federal candidates. It's called soft money. Wednesday, the Senate moved toward final passage of a bill that would shut down that soft money loophole, which both parties use.
The so-called soft money, and that we will be eliminating. What the press refers to as sewer money.
But Bush promises to veto that bill, making the president's soft money dinner a target for protest.
You can be assured 1,000 more points of light for you.
1,000 points of light, ladies.
An embarrassment, to be sure. To make things less embarrassing,
Take your tags off your hat.
Republicans removed the Bush-Quayle name from thousands and thousands of hats. CNN obtained one of those hat bands, showing the hats were donated by Merrill Lynch, the big stockbroker. Merrill Lynch is bullish on Republicans and a big soft money donor to the GOP. Merrill Lynch's chief executive, William Schreier, was one of the 5 deputy chairmen of the president's dinner. Merrill Lynch gives a lot, company executives gave $77,000 to House and Senate candidates in the 1990 election, and the Merrill Lynch Political Action Committee gave more than $121,000. And last year alone, Merrill Lynch gave $94,000 in soft money. Meanwhile, Merrill Lynch is lobbying for a capital gains tax cut, which would boost sales of stocks and bonds, and Merrill Lynch's sales commissions. Merrill Lynch also wants tax-deductible individual retirement accounts, another profitable line of business. The reason Republicans removed the Merrill Lynch hat bands is that GOP lawyers worried it might look too much like a corporate campaign donation to Bush's own re-election, and that would be illegal. Merrill Lynch would not say how much it gave this time. It gave $30,000 to last year's president's dinner, however. The law requires Republicans to disclose all the donors, but the report is not due until July. Catherine?
Brooks, might it be a bit naive to expect the soft money to disappear? Where's the money going to go?
The money's going to go to state parties in those states where senators are running for re-election, and it will be spent in ways that help House and Senate candidates, Republicans in those states. For example, getting out the vote, registering voters, that sort of thing. The Republicans call it party-building expenditures.
Yes, indeed. Brooks Jackson, thanks very much. Bernie?
Congress is about as popular as the plague these days, but Bill Clinton needs support from Democrats on the Hill, and today he is knocking on their doors. Our national political correspondent Gene Randall joins us on Capitol Hill. Gene?
Bernie, encouraged by his impressive primary victory in Pennsylvania on Tuesday, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton came courting today, trying to build up his support here on Capitol Hill, and there are some early signs of success.
He's going to pick up a lot of superdelegates who have heretofore been uncommitted today.
I think this is the beginning of a real revolution in the Clinton campaign.
Democratic convention superdelegates from the House and Senate have been slow to jump on a Bill Clinton bandwagon. His visit here on Wednesday was meant to change that. And after meeting with the House Democratic Caucus Wednesday morning, Clinton was upbeat.
It was reaching out for the people who want to be agents of change. I said, you know, the best way to deal with the problems people have with the Congress is to change the election process, to reduce the influence of special interests, to come up with a program to revitalize the economy of America. And a lot of the people in that room want to do that.
House Majority Leader Richard Gephardt, who endorsed Clinton earlier this month, said the candidate had done well.
I heard in the room today a tremendous amount of excitement about his candidacy and about serving with him as president, as a team, a united team.
Bill Clinton, meanwhile, was celebrating Pennsylvania voter exit polls which showed him gaining ground on the character issue. 61% of the Democrats questioned on Tuesday said he had the honesty and integrity to be president. In New York 3 weeks ago, half the Democrats polled voiced the opposite view.
So I think we showed remarkable improvement on that from New York. I think it's going in the right direction. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Democratic Party Chairman Ron Brown says Clinton has turned the corner on the character issue.
The voters trust him, as I knew they would, as they get to know him.
Clinton met with Democrats in the Senate Wednesday afternoon and made the same pitch for a partnership. And after that meeting, Clinton met again with reporters.
While it is true, critical in the past of some things that have happened in the Congress, as I think the Congress members themselves have, the essential truth is that we're not going to turn this country around until we have a president and a Congress jointly committed to change the life of this country and restore the leadership of this country economically. That's what came out of these meetings today.
For Bill Clinton, the name of the game now is wrapping up as quickly as possible the Democratic presidential nomination well before the Democratic Party's July National Convention in New York. What happened today on Capitol Hill could help. Bill Clinton has picked up 27 new superdelegates in the House and 4 in the Senate. That gives him a total of 119 superdelegates out of the 275 available here on Capitol Hill. Bernie?
Gene? Despite his string of primary wins, Clinton remains hundreds of delegates short of the total needed for the Democratic nomination. Right now, Clinton has 1,521 delegates. He's way ahead of Paul Tsongas and Jerry Brown, of course, but Clinton needs 624 more delegates to get the nomination. Clinton's total includes 272 of the 772 superdelegates. 406 of them remain uncommitted. To win the nomination, Clinton must either convince more superdelegates to join him, or he needs to slug it out in the remaining primary and caucus states. 1,072 delegates still are up for grabs. But without superdelegates, Clinton will have to win 60% of the remaining delegates in order to get the nomination. Joining us from Boston is Tad Devine. He was the chief delegate hunter for Michael Dukakis in 1988, and he managed Bob Kerry's presidential campaign this year. Is Clinton going about this in the right way?
Yes, I think he is. It seemed like he had a very successful day today, meeting directly with the delegates. These superdelegates, although they're party leaders, they tend to be followers in this respect, that they wait to see what the voters do, and when the voters approve a candidate, they follow their lead. Now that Clinton's been certified as a strong candidate by voters in places like New York and Pennsylvania, I expect he'll continue to have the kind of support we saw today with the rest of the superdelegates.
What percentage do you think he will get of the superdelegates at large before Madison Square Garden?
A very high percentage, probably as high as 80, 85, perhaps as high as 90%. These are party leaders, elected officials. They're concerned with their own elections, many of them, and they're going to want to unite behind a candidate who they see as emerging from this process. Governor Clinton's on about the same timetable that Governor Dukakis was 4 years ago, right after New York and Pennsylvania when Dukakis emerged. He traveled to Washington, he began to win support, and he began to win a lot of support from the superdelegates. So I think he's on the right time frame, and I'd expect that he'll win overwhelming support from their ranks.
Very honestly, why do you think these people on Capitol Hill are sitting on their hands?
Well, they wanted to see whether or not he'd make it through this process. This is a real rite of passage for Governor Clinton. He's been marked up in the early phases of the nominating process by a number of things. He had a tough experience going through the New York primary. It was very difficult with all the scrutiny he came under with the press, but he survived that process. They want to see if he's going to be validated by voters, and he has been. I mean, 700,000 people voted for him yesterday in Pennsylvania. So that kind of validation serves him very well. They see that things are changing. The internals on the exit polls from these primaries are looking much more favorable for him. These important indicators such as trust and leadership are beginning to turn in his favor. Now that they are, I think the party leaders and elected officials see that he could potentially be a very strong candidate who could do well in the general election and someone who they could easily run with.
How does Clinton avoid appearing to be begging?
Well, I think mostly by winning support with voters. That's the best way to win support with superdelegates. You have to talk directly to these people one-on-one. It's sort of like the door-to-door or retail politics side of the delegate process. Directly reaching out and contacting them first at the staff level to make sure they're ready to support a candidate, but ultimately the close or the sale has to be done directly to them. I think if he wins support with voters, which he has done in recent weeks, if he continues to do that, these superdelegates will coalesce behind his candidacy. He won't look like he's begging for their support. Indeed, it will look much more like a bandwagon which is developing in his favor.
Tad Devine, is it fair to characterize the posture and the attitude of these superdelegates as grudging?
Well, I don't know if it's grudging. I think they've been somewhat slow to come to the mark because they wanted to see whether or not Governor Clinton would succeed with voters. But I have to take you back to the historic timetable. In 1984, Walter Mondale did receive a lot of early support. These House members were picked prior to New Hampshire. After that experience, many of them realized that it's not a good idea for them to go before voters speak. They moved the dates of selection back. In 1988, it wasn't until the end of April. This time it was for the House in mid-March after Illinois and Michigan, or the week of Illinois and Michigan. They really wanted to see what the voters had to say. So now that they've seen the voters speak, there's very little reluctance to jump on board.
Will Clinton wrap it up by the June 2nd California primary?
I think he will. I think the benchmark that he must hit right now is to try to get close enough prior to June 2nd so that he can easily go over the top on the last day. There are 700 delegates available on June 7th, so I think if he can move his delegate count from where it is right now, which is this mid-1,500 range, up to about 1,845, he'll easily go over the top on the last day, even if Governor Brown is able to succeed in his home state of California.
Tad Devine in Boston, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Catherine?
Coming up next, we'll be talking with a Pennsylvania woman who came from nowhere in the polls to win the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate.
I was seeing my parents off, and I realized...
Dad, what do you got in here? Gardening equipment?
They've planned their retirement for a long time.
Common sense says the time to plan for your future is today.
One day, it's going to be our turn.
And Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can help you begin.
Debbie? One day, Jeff sat down to figure out how much we'll have for retirement.
How's it going, Einstein?
Very funny. Take a look at this.
I thought we were doing a pretty good job. At this rate, we'll never retire.
Over 2 million Americans trust their retirement savings to Fidelity with choices like Magellan Fund. Magellan's approach to stock investing has made it the #1 performing mutual fund for the past 15-year period. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to planning for retirement. You'll also receive everything you need to take your first step. Call 1-800-525-7700. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Why is it, Lou, you come in here every morning and order a large orange juice?
I like orange juice.
Oh, really?
It's got potassium, vitamin C, lots of vitamin C.
Orange juice. It's got the vitamins, minerals, and taste that make you feel so good.
Come on, Lou, isn't there another reason?
I kind of like the company.
100% pure Florida quality orange juice. It makes you feel so good.
Here, have another glass, Lou.
On CNN tonight, an interview with Vice President Dan Quayle on Moneyline. Then on Crossfire, quality programming or a waste of your tax dollars. Should the government fund public television? All tonight on CNN.
You could call this next item a political Cinderella story. 4 weeks ago, polls gave Lynn Yeakel a paltry 6% in the race for Pennsylvania's Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate. But Yeakel will be in the general election after a stunning upset last night. She received 44% of the vote, 11 points ahead of Lieutenant Governor Mark Singal. The victory wasn't the work of a fairy godmother. Yeakel worked hard, tapped into voter anger about Republican incumbent Arlen Specter's treatment of Anita Hill during the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings.
11th, did you conclude that Judge Thomas was guilty of sexual harassment?
Did this make you as angry as it made me? I'm Lynn Yeakel, and it's time we do something about the mess in Washington.
But today, Specter told reporters it should be more than a one-issue race.
I think there's a lot more to being a United States Senator than simply a single issue, no matter how important people may think the Thomas hearings are. I think that the job issue, economic recovery, affordable health care, crime control, education reform, environmental protection, 15,000 Soviet missiles out there. There's a lot more to this campaign to being a United States Senator than a single issue.
Ms. Yeakel joins us from Philadelphia. Arlen Specter, I heard you say that Anita Hill, the hearings were not the issue, Arlen Specter was the issue. Can you define exactly what you meant by that in jumping into this race?
Sure. I was very outraged, as I think many Americans were, at the Judiciary Committee hearings, not only at the composition of that committee, which clearly does not reflect the diversity of this population. It was 14 men on the Judiciary Committee, but also I was really embarrassed and humiliated and very angry at the performance of Arlen Specter, who is the senator from Pennsylvania. I thought that his questioning of Anita Hill was unnecessarily rough, that he interrogated her, and that it was a very undignified kind of performance. And so those were motivating factors for me to enter this race. So the issue for me is not Anita Hill, the issue is Arlen Specter.
Well, and as Senator Specter said in the sound that we just heard, there are many more issues facing a senator. You can't run a one-issue campaign.
Well, we are certainly not running a one-issue campaign. My campaign put out position papers on absolutely every subject imaginable. We had an inch-thick book of positions that were given to the editorial boards of all the papers in this state, and I was endorsed as the candidate in the Democratic primary by both the major papers in Philadelphia and the major papers in Pittsburgh, as well as other leading papers around the state. So this is a very serious race. And I am running on all the issues, and particularly I'm focusing on the economy, the creation of jobs and job training for our people, education as a national priority, and the reform of the healthcare system. So I'm really talking about domestic issues, which I think we all recognize need to go to the top of our national agenda. But I also have position papers on foreign policy, on trade, on the environment, and really on all the issues that concern a United States Senator.
Many are jumping out of the job, leaving the Hill as you're choosing to direct yourself toward that position. Do you really think you can make a change in a system many are saying is too stagnant to move?
Well, I think if enough of us get in who are new leaders, who have new energy and new ideas, new approaches to solving the problems that are facing this nation, that we can make a difference. I mean, I think it's clear that in 1992, the government is not working. People feel that their tax dollars are not being well spent. There is very little return on our tax dollars. I think there's a thirst out there in the American public for new leadership, a new voice, new vision, and that's really what my very smashing victory last night was all about.
Those words have been heard before. New leadership, new vision, that's a standard response from a politician. What specifically do you do upon arriving in Capitol Hill that really does shake up the system?
Well, there are a number of things that I would do very early on. One thing I would do is to move to lead the way in restoring the federal funding for education that's been cut over the last decade. The federal commitment to education has been cut in half. And it seems clear to me that our education system is just not doing the job and that we really should restore the funding that's been cut. So I would work to prevent the high school dropout rate, which is now at 30%, to fully fund Head Start, to do some of the things that George Bush said he was going to do in 1988 when he campaigned as the education president, and which have certainly not been done in this time. I think there are many issues facing this country, and what we really need is people who know, who understand these issues, who've worked with them, as I have, directly in the community, and who really have the leadership ability to reshape our national priorities.
Women as candidates, as political candidates, you've put much of your own money in the race. How difficult has it been to raise money and to receive support?
Well, the money has been pouring in the last few weeks. I think that in the early days of the primary race, very few people really knew who I was or what I stood for. And so it was very important to have some funding up front, to have the commercials, which gave me an opportunity to take my message directly to the voters of Pennsylvania. As soon as that message was communicated and people understood who I was and what I stood for, the campaign caught fire, and it really did catch fire. I think that's evident in terms of the vote last night. But it was very difficult in the beginning to raise money except from people who knew me. Now, among the people who knew me, we have raised over $600,000 from over 3,000 contributors. And
let me interrupt just to ask you one final question before we run out of time, and that is, your strategy during the primary seemed to be to run against your general election opponent. How does the strategy change, or do you simply maintain that as you move toward November?
Well, the strategy was to run against Arlen Specter. That's why I got into the race. And now what we will be doing is looking at Arlen Specter's voting record, which is not so terrific. We will be focusing on the role he has played as part of the Reagan-Bush era in voting with the president and the failed economic policies. We will be really talking about the issues and holding Arlen Specter accountable for his role in leading to the problems that the state of Pennsylvania is facing today.
Lynn Yeakel, Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Inside Politics 92 continues right after this.
This is a Mita plain paper fax. And this is, well, it's a little curl. Whoa. This is a thermal fax. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. But it's hard to erase. Oh, boy. Which one is better? Well, which one looks better to you? Let me just straighten this and make it.
Call 1-800-ABC-MITA.
Look at me eating peanut brittle. Even with my dentures, thanks to Super Polygrip.
Super Polygrip holds so tight, many denture wearers can enjoy more of their favorite foods.
Even peanut brittle.
Super Polygrip.
I try to ignore my sensitive teeth, but they hurt.
Don't ignore your sensitive teeth. Sensodyne helps stop the pain that can make you stop brushing. Could lead even to tooth loss.
Thanks, Sensodyne.
Sensodyne helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
So you're shopping at Frank's for great spring values.
Uh-huh. At Frank's, we always spend less money on quality flowers, shrubs.
But what we really like are the great gardening tips.
Oh, less money.
Great tips.
For a great selection of Boss work gloves, come to Frank's. Choose from lots of styles and colors, from leather to cloth, all now 25% off. And choose from our colorful annuals and hanging baskets with Frank's quality difference. Expert selected and cared for and affordably priced.
Beautiful things begin at
Great tips.
Frank's Nursery and Crafts.
Your GM dealer is serious about putting service back in the service department.
How serious?
Come in for a Mr. Goodwrench Quick Lube Plus oil change and you could win one of 21 GM cars or light trucks. Or you could win one of millions of other prizes. In fact, everyone's a winner. Just come in, scratch, and win during the Flag of Winner sweepstakes at your Mr. Goodwrench Quick Lube Plus dealer.
I think they really are serious.
Usually, when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct, or We Cut, is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
Wouldn't it be great if you could test fly the world's hottest fighter jets one by one? You know, F-14s, F-16s, Harriers, A-10s, and stealth fighters. Well, hang on to your G-suit and get ready for great fighting jets from Time Life Video. Plane by plane, it puts you in the cockpits of the hottest jets in the U.S. arsenal, with unbelievable footage of your favorite planes and first-hand stories of how they were developed. Take stealth, for instance. Did you know that the latest generation ATF has so much thrust, it can go 100,000 feet straight up without ever using its wings? From camouflage to composite construction, Stealth takes you behind closed doors to see the latest radar-evading technology, and you can check it out for just $9.99. Each tape in the collection puts you at the controls of a different fighting jet, with critical specs and schematic drawings printed on the back of each box. You'll fly the Navy's F-14 Tomcat, the state-of-the-art F-18 Hornet, and the hard-fighting F-15 Eagle. Call this toll-free number and try Stealth for just $9.99. Future videos will follow at the regular price, but there's no commitment to buy. If you're the kind of fighter fanatic I am, Great Fighting Jets will blow your socks off. Are you ready?
To order your Great Fighting Jets video, call 1-800-654-2900. That's 1-800-654-2900. Or send $9.99 plus $3.23 shipping and handling to Great Fighting Jets, P.O. Box 11066, Department B, Chicago, Illinois.
Tomorrow on Inside Politics, would-be presidential contender H. Ross Perot faces a brewing battle on his home turf. Texas Republicans already have Perot in their crosshairs, and he claims they're firing some nasty shots. Well, that's all for this edition of Inside Politics 92. I'm Catherine Crier in Atlanta.
I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington. Thanks for watching. Lou Waters has a preview of what's coming up next on CNN.
Thanks, Bernie. Ahead, a live report from Simi Valley, California, where the jurors in the Los Angeles police beating trial have reached partial verdicts in the case. Also, efforts to determine the safety and effectiveness of a promising new cancer drug. And details about today's deadly Amtrak accident in Virginia.
He tried to break the train, and you know, you could feel it and feel it. And then there was the sound of the impact.
Dozens of passengers have been injured. Join Cheryl Atkinson and me for the rest of Early Prime next here on CNN.
Coming up, Early Prime continues, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable systems, next on CNN.
I cried a tear.